Slavery is an issue known to most people, and is something that all Americans should study as a part of our past. There were many people that acted as upstandards during this troubling time. There were people like Abraham Lincoln and Frederick Douglass, people who stood up for what was right despite the risks these sort of good-natured actions posed against themselves. Among the many that stood in opposition to slavery in America was George Moses Horton. George is one upstander that isn't talked about often. A poet and a dreamer for a better future, George expressed himself through his writing. For his full story, we have to go to the beginning, or more accurately, his beginning. George Moses Horton was born in the year of 1798 in Northampton County, North Carolina. Even though George was born a slave, he quickly discovered he had immense love for literature and writing. Going directly against the law at the time, George carefully studied old hymnals and aging dictionaries to teach himself how to read. As George grew into adolescence, his master began to make him take frequent trips to Chapel Hill. It was there George recited his first poems out loud to an ever-growing crowd of college students, who encouraged this habit by giving him books of poetry in an effort to help him build upon his natural strength for writing. He practiced, creating poems during his long hours of work on the farm and setting them free to a steady audience at Chapel Hill. Eventually, as the news of his poems spread, George was contacted by fellow writer Caroline Lee Whitting Hens. Collaborating tirelessly together, they created George's first official work, The Hope of Liberty. This work contained many protests against the acts of slavery and George's enslavement. George hoped this would buy his freedom, but it did not. Determined not to be defeated, George worked for over 30 years. Using the money he generated from his poetry, he tried, sadly failed to buy his freedom. It was during this time he published his second work, The Poetical Works, which also included many messages against and insults towards slavery. After the Civil War was fought, George traveled abroad with the 9th Michigan Cavalry Volunteers, publishing his third and final work, Naked Genius, before his death in 1884. George was the first African American to publish a book in the South, and his legacy is one that is sure to live on as a message against injustice and a message of courage to those who face wrong in the future.